My career ended over lasagna and fake smiles. Fired at a family dinner, replaced by my boss's clueless daughter while his relatives clinked their wine glasses. I didn't flip the table. I didn't shout. I just smiled while Brittany beamed at me across the table, her red wine teeth glinting. Richard, my boss for 17 years, tapped his glass. Everyone, big announcement. Brittany's joining Carmichael Industries, full-time. She'll be replacing Karen, who's finally taking a break. His wife clapped. His brother grinned. Brittany preened like she'd won an Oscar. I stared at my untouched lasagna, still piping hot. I wasn't family. I was the seat filler for real ones. I said, "That's great, Richard," and forced a small applause. My mouth smiled. My throat burned. Brittany added, "I've shadowed Dad, like forever, so it'll be smooth. Right, Aunt Linda?" Linda, sipping rosé, said, "Of course, dear. You've got natural leadership." She couldn't spell procurement if you spotted her the first 6 letters. I dabbed my lips with a cloth napkin. "Well, I guess this is my retirement party then." Richard chuckled. "Karen, don't be dramatic. You'll stay on a few weeks to transition things." That was the real gut punch. Fired, and expected to train my replacement. I excused myself to the powder room. My hands trembled as I closed the door. I looked in the mirror and said it out loud. "You're done." But I wasn't. Back at the table, Richard raised his glass. "To Brittany's future!" Everyone clinked. I sipped. Inside, a fire lit. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table in my sweats, drinking bitter black coffee. I opened an encrypted drive I hadn't touched in years. Old project timelines, procurement reports, personal contacts, contracts, and one folder, Langton Blackwell, a small consulting firm I'd helped off the ground 10 years ago with strategic intel, just enough to give them lift without violating any NDA. I opened a draft email to its founder, subject, "Let's talk." Then I sent a text to Marcus Lang, our IT head and my last real ally. Marcus replied before sunrise. Just one word, ready. I trusted him. Marcus had been at Carmichael Industries nearly as long as I had. Quiet, sharp, loyal. He didn't smile much, but he didn't miss anything either. By 7 a.m., we met at a diner near the industrial park. I ordered eggs and black coffee. Marcus got nothing. He leaned forward, his voice low. "So it's a takedown?" I nodded. "Not personal, structural." He smirked. "Sure. Just happens to start with the guy who gutted your roll over baked ziti." I showed him my flash drive. Internal workflows. Bottlenecks Brittany wouldn't understand if they hit her in the face. Sloppy vendor relationships she'd fumble like a wet football. And confidential client agreements that required my signature, my name, not Richard's. Marcus tapped the table. "So what's the move?" "I've already contacted Langton Blackwell," I said. "They're eager." He blinked. "Wait, you kept ties with those guys?" I gave a small shrug. "Insurance. We mapped it out. I'd provide them with redacted copies of Carmichael's internal inefficiencies. Nothing illegal, but enough to exploit market vulnerabilities. Enough to start peeling away key accounts. Marcus would help from the inside, quietly flagging system gaps and forwarding me any signs Brittany was already floundering. And she was. By Monday, I'd received 2 emails. One from a regional manager asking if Brittany's new vision really included cutting supply chain audits. Another from a client confused why their annual review was suddenly rescheduled without explanation. I just replied, "Noted, thank you." At noon, I walked into the office like nothing had happened. Brittany waved from my old desk. "Hey, Karen. Dad said you'd help with the systems." I smiled. Of course. Her screen was open to an Excel file. Wrong tab. Wrong quarter. Wrong formula. A beautiful mess. Richard passed by, nodding briskly. "Karen, hope you're settling into your support role." I nodded. Just like home. But that night, I emailed Langton Blackwell again. Attached, a spreadsheet titled Vendor Termination Risk Assessment. Below it, a message. "The wheels are already turning. Let me know when you're ready to drive the bus." By Thursday, the first client bailed. Danielle Foster. Old school. Ran a distribution network out of Milwaukee. We'd built trust over years. Quiet check-ins. Late-night calls. The kind of relationship Brittany didn't even know needed nurturing. Her email hit at 10:47 a.m. Karen, I'm pulling my contract. The new leadership is scattered. I'll be working with Langton Blackwell moving forward. No anger. No drama. Just done. I stared at the screen for a long second. Then I took a breath and hit forward, sent it straight to Richard. No comment. 15 minutes later, his office door slammed shut. Through the frosted glass, I saw his hands flying. Brittany sat across from him, blinking like she'd wandered into the wrong meeting. Marcus walked past my desk, eyebrows raised. I didn't react. At 3 o'clock, I received an email marked urgent. Subject: Client migration plan from Brittany Carmichael Body. Hey Karen, can you help me understand how Danielle's account was structured? I think I missed something in the CRM lol. LOL. I didn't reply. Instead, I met Marcus in the break room. He was pouring stale coffee into a chipped mug. She's already bleeding, I said. He nodded. I've got something for you. He pulled a USB from his pocket. Internal emails. Brittany's been overriding procurement workflows, ignoring client service protocols, blaming juniors. He paused. And one more thing. She presented your old quarterly strategy doc to the execs last week. Took full credit. I didn't flinch. Perfect. That night, I stayed late. Office empty. Lights buzzing. I opened a new folder. Case materials. Phase 2. Dropped in screenshots. Emails. Side-by-side comparisons of my original docs and Brittany's lifted version. Next morning, Richard called a team huddle. Said we were navigating some turbulence. Said Brittany had a fresh approach. Nobody clapped. When he asked for input, Marcus crossed his arms. We lost Danielle Foster. That's not turbulence. That's a landslide. Richard's nostrils flared. Brittany sipped her smoothie. I said nothing, because later that afternoon, Langton Blackwell sent me a contract. Director, Strategic Development, pending board approval. All I had to do was sign. And I did. I signed the contract in blue ink, deliberately, like a wedding license. One signature to seal my future, and Richard's fate. Langton Blackwell wanted to wait a week before announcing. I asked them to wait 10 days. Let the rot spread a little further. In the meantime, I played mentor. Brittany asked me to walk her through the vendor matrix. She called it the Excel spider thing. I sat beside her, leaned over her shoulder, and let her build the wrong formulas with a smile on my face. She giggled. You're like, so chill about all this. I was, because I knew what was coming. On day 6, a second client bailed. Then a third. Richard panicked and sent a company-wide memo calling it a strategic recalibration. Marcus just whispered to me, he's circling the drain. I nodded. He doesn't even see the plug's been pulled. Langton Blackwell sent over a slide deck, confidential. Their legal team had compiled it in advance of the upcoming shareholder meeting. Slide 23 hit like a brick. Projected Q2 client attrition at Carmichael Industries, 38% at minimum. Underneath, a single line. Lead consultant, Karen Doyle. I took a screenshot. Labeled it Zinger Ammo. By Friday, Danielle Foster's departure hit the industry blog circuit. Headline: Legacy client leaves Carmichael after confusing leadership shift. I forwarded it to Richard. No subject line. He called me in 10 minutes later, red-faced. Are you leaking to the press? I shrugged. It's public record! He slammed his hand on the desk. You're either with us or against us, Karen. I stood, smoothed my blouse. I've already made that choice, and I walked out. That night, I met with Langton Blackwell's CEO in a downtown hotel bar. She ordered bourbon. I stuck with soda. We shook hands. She said, You've already proven you're worth more than 3 Brittany's. I grinned. You haven't even seen the fireworks yet, because the shareholder meeting was 4 days away. And I had one last trick in my folder, a memo Brittany sent, authorizing a shipment that violated compliance regulations. She marked it low priority. It cost the company $220,000 in penalties. I planned to show it on a 40-inch screen. The morning of the shareholder meeting, I wore navy. Clean, simple, sharp. The kind of color that doesn't beg, it commands. Marcus met me in the parking lot. He handed me a thumb drive. Final backups. Just in case they try to block you. They won't, I said. Richard still thinks I'm bluffing. We walked in together. The boardroom was packed. Long table, high chairs, more polished egos than polished wood. Richard stood at the head, flanked by Brittany. She wore white, powerless, but trying. He cleared his throat. Before we get started, I'd like to address the recent client turbulence. We've brought in fresh talent to realign our vision. He motioned toward Brittany like she was a breakthrough in leadership science. A few polite claps, mostly from people who'd flown in from warmer places and didn't want to be rude. Then the Langton Blackwell representative stood, calm, crisp. Her silver blazer caught the light just enough. She passed out folders. Carmichael Industries has lost 5 major clients in 3 weeks. All of them now partner with us, whispers. A chair scraped. Richard tried to stand. Now wait a minute. She raised her hand. Please hold questions. Then she nodded at me. I stood. Good afternoon, I said. My name is Karen Doyle. I helped build this company from a garage to this boardroom, and I'm here because loyalty shouldn't be a liability. I clicked the remote. Slide 1. Vendor compliance failure. Brittany Carmichael authorization. Slide 2. Client testimonial. Loss of confidence. Slide 3. Side-by-side comparison. Plagiarized internal strategy documents. A hush fell so thick you could hear the HVAC. I ended on the contract. Karen Doyle, Executive Vice President. Langton Blackwell. With a note beneath, effective immediately. Richard sputtered. Brittany's jaw hung. One board member leaned forward. Is this why we lost Foster Logistics? I nodded once. Yes, and 3 others. Another voice. Why weren't we told? Richard tried again. This is a smear. But I stepped back and let the facts speak. They always do. Outside, Marcus and I stood in the wind. He lit a cigarette. So, what now? I smiled. Now? We watched the board burn the house he built with matches he handed me. They called for a recess. Richard didn't speak, just stormed out, red as a warning light. Brittany trailed behind, blinking like a deer in stilettos. Inside, the board buzzed. Marcus and I sat near the back, just far enough to watch them turn on each other. 15 minutes later, they called us back in. The chairman, Hollis Granger, old school money with a neck like a vulture, stood and buttoned his jacket. We've reviewed the documentation provided, he said. It appears Mrs. Doyle's evidence is substantial. Someone coughed. Someone else muttered. It's damning, Granger continued, eyes flat. Effective immediately. Richard Carmichael is suspended pending further review. Brittany Carmichael's role is terminated. Gasps. Brittany opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Granger turned toward me. We'd like to open negotiations with Langton Blackwell. The board is prepared to discuss partnerships and asset reallocation. I raised one brow. I'm happy to coordinate through legal. But I'm not coming back. His lip twitched. That stung him. I stood, gathered my folder, and said it loud enough for every exec to hear. You chose nepotism over results. You chose legacy over logic. You gambled the future on bloodlines instead of backbone. No one stopped me as I left. Outside, the air hit cold and clean. I looked up. Sky was a hard silver. Perfect weather for endings. Back at Langton Blackwell, they'd already set up my new office. Top floor. Glass walls. Quiet. First order of business, I called Danielle Foster. Thanked her for the trust. Second, I approved 3 job offers. Former Carmichael teammates. Good people. Ones Richard always overlooked. Then I opened my messages. 1 voicemail. Unknown number. But I recognized the voice immediately. Richard. He sounded tired. Smaller. Karen. I know things got out of hand. We need to talk. Please. Just call me back. I didn't laugh. I just tapped forward. Sent the voicemail to Marcus with the caption, LOL. Might use this as my ringtone. Then I got back to work. The lawsuit landed on Richard's desk the next morning. Langton Blackwell filed for tortious interference, citing Brittany's unauthorized decisions, the compliance breach, and the sudden hemorrhaging of contracts that once made Carmichael Industries solvent. I didn't send the documents myself. That was handled by legal. But I knew the timing. They filed at 9:01 a.m., just as Richard would have opened his overpriced French roast and checked his email with trembling fingers. Marcus texted me 2 words. He's drowning. I replied, let him. Meanwhile, Langton Blackwell's PR team launched a soft announcement across all major networks. We welcome Karen Doyle as Executive VP of Strategic Development. A proven leader joins our next chapter. The article included a photo. Me in a gray suit, chin lifted, calm eyes, no smile. By noon, my inbox pinged with 3 offers from former clients I hadn't even contacted yet. One subject line simply read, "We're with you." But the best moment came 2 days later, during a mandatory deposition. Marcus was there. So was Brittany, pale as printer paper, in a blazer 2 sizes too big. Richard sat stiff, sweat gathering beneath his collar. His attorney fumbled papers, trying to downplay the damage. But then the opposing counsel slid a page forward. Brittany's email, time-stamped, clearly approving a high-risk vendor swap without legal review. Richard reached for it, confused. "I never saw this." And Brittany, in a voice so small it barely hit the microphone, said, "You told me to make decisions." Dead silence. Richard blinked like he'd been slapped. "That's not what I—" The lawyer cut him off. "Mr. Carmichael, please let her finish." I watched from the back. No need to speak. They were unraveling themselves. Afterward, Marcus and I met for coffee. The real kind, not company breakroom sludge. He raised his mug. To slow, brutal justice. I clinked mine against his. To letting fools light their own fuse. Later that night, I got another voicemail from Richard. His voice cracked. "I was wrong about everything. You carried us. I see that now. Please, help me fix this." I forwarded it to Danielle with one word: perspective. 3 days later, Brittany tried to fight back. Not smart. Not strategic. Just loud. She posted on LinkedIn some hollow essay about young leadership being undermined by outdated structures, tagged it #NextGen and #FemaleFounders. A thinly veiled jab at me. It had 5 likes, 1 from her old roommate, 2 from bots. Marcus sent me the link with the note. "She's flailing. It's sad, almost." I replied, "Almost." Then the real blow landed. The investor filings. The quarterly report, usually boilerplate, now carried a warning label. Bold and clear. Leadership risk. Pending litigation against Brittany Carmichael and former CEO Richard Carmichael. A subsection named my departure as the catalyst of key client migration. Richard's name was now legally linked to Brittany's failure. One document. Permanent record. Meanwhile, Langton Blackwell announced a partnership expansion with Foster Logistics and 2 major regional accounts. I'd brokered them both before Brittany ever had a desk. The news hit the industry trades. Karen Doyle's quiet power move, how one woman turned her exit into empire. Marcus left a printout on my desk, highlighted the title, and wrote, "Quiet? Debatable." But what twisted the knife was the internal leak. A slide deck Brittany had drafted, titled "Rebranding Carmichael," somehow made its way online. One page featured legacy staff assessment, with my name marked as replaceable, resistant to change. Another page showed a timeline where she'd pitched herself as future COO within 12 months. The document was laughable, but public now. Credibility? Gone. I didn't need to comment, I didn't need to tweet. Danielle Foster did that for me. She shared the leak with the caption, "Leadership is earned, not assigned at dinner." 15,000 likes, including mine. Richard's silence stretched. No more calls, no more voicemails. But Brittany sent one last message, a short email. "I know you hate me, but please, I didn't know it'd go this far." I didn't reply. Instead, I printed it, added it to my folder, the one labeled Lessons, and slid it into the drawer of my new desk. The board voted on a Friday. It wasn't even close. Richard Carmichael was officially removed as CEO. Not suspended, not on leave. Removed. 8 votes to 1. The lone dissenter was his golf buddy from finance, who resigned an hour later to explore new opportunities. No press conference. Just a sterile bulletin. Carmichael Industries thanks Richard Carmichael for his years of service. Marcus forwarded the PDF with one line. And just like that, he's history. Brittany was listed as, quote, "no longer affiliated." Her LinkedIn changed by noon. Former Chief Development Officer, open to work. No endorsements, no references, no future in sight. Meanwhile, I had a standing meeting with Langton Blackwell's partners to discuss a new initiative, client rescue programs for companies burned by poor transitions. The name? The Doyle model. I didn't pick it, but I didn't argue. Late that afternoon, I walked into my old coffee shop, the 1-2 blocks from Carmichael HQ. Same barista. Same dark roast. She looked up. Haven't seen you in a bit, I smiled. Been busy. Took my coffee outside and sat across the street from the building I'd helped grow from a rented garage into 12 stories of glass and ego. Through the tinted lobby doors, I saw a moving crew hauling out boxes. One had Brittany's name scribbled in pink marker. I didn't feel smug. I felt done. Back at the office, Marcus had left something on my desk. A small card. Inside it said, "You never needed revenge. You just needed a room full of proof." Attached was a photo. Me at the shareholders' meeting. Slide deck lit behind me. Chin up. Caption in Marcus's handwriting. "This is what competence looks like." That night, I logged into the internal hiring portal. 3 job offers approved. All to former Carmichael staff who'd stuck by me, even when things got cold. One message I sent read, "You always deserved better. Come build something with me." The replies were instant and grateful, because loyalty wasn't a weakness, it was a compass. And I was finally following mine, without anyone telling me where I didn't belong. The first day my old team walked into Langton Blackwell felt like a homecoming disguised as onboarding. Janice from procurement, Calvin from logistics, and Deshawn, the sharpest analyst Richard, never bothered to learn by name. I greeted each one at the door. No speeches, just a nod and a smile. "You're not trainees," I said. "You're builders." We got to work immediately, launching Project Phoenix, a streamlined operations model that gutted unnecessary meetings, automated the nonsense, and handed actual power to the folks who did the damn work. Marcus led IT. Janice handled vendor compliance. Deshawn built dashboards that made Brittany's spreadsheets look like crayon art. Every time I walked past their desks, I felt it, what Richard never saw. Talent that didn't need babysitting, just room to move. By the end of the week, we'd landed 2 more contracts, one from a former Carmichael partner, another from a brand new startup who said, "We want the team that left Carmichael." Word was spreading. And Richard? Word was he'd tried to pitch himself as a turnaround consultant. That flopped. Investors remembered the fallout. One of them reportedly said, "You hired your daughter." That's not strategy, that's vanity. Brittany, meanwhile, posted a lifestyle reel. Something about finding purpose in the chaos. Her comments were off. Late Friday, I received a nondescript envelope. Inside, an invitation. Carmichael Alumni Reunion, hosted by former executives. Casual drinks, no hard feelings. I laughed so loud Marcus looked up. "You going?" he asked. I tapped the invite on the table. "I already RSVP'd, he grinned. "With what?" I held up my phone, showed him the message. "Thanks, but I'm busy running the company that actually kept its clients." We clinked mugs, his tea, mine black coffee, and got back to work. At 6:32 p.m., my office lights were the only ones still on. I looked out the window. City humming below. My desk cluttered with plans. Momentum. Control. Not just a new job. A new legacy. One I built. One I chose. And this time, nobody was going to steal the credit. By week's end, the final reckoning arrived, wrapped in legal letterhead and padded gilt. Carmichael's board issued a statement. Mismanagement and executive negligence led to the destabilization of key accounts. Structural correction underway. Translation. Richard's name was now a punchline in shareholder lawsuits. My lawyer called at noon. "You might want to sit for this." I didn't. He continued. "Richard's lawyers are floating a settlement. They want to avoid further deposition. And," he hesitated, "he's requesting mediation with you, privately." I stared out my window, sipping stale coffee. "He thinks I'll fix what he broke. He thinks you're still the adult in the room," my lawyer said. I hung up. No answer given. But I opened my drawer, pulled out the folder labeled Langton Blackwell Founding Notes, tucked behind it, the real ace. A signed consulting agreement, my original one from 10 years ago, In it, a small clause, one I'd insisted on as a just in case. Should Karen Doyle return in an executive capacity, any clients she transfers may be credited as shared assets pending equity review. I had transferred 12 clients. Equity was owed. I brought it to the next board meeting, silent, calm, handed the document to Langton Blackwell's partners. They read, reread, smiled. The next morning, I got the call. "We're offering you a seat at the table," the CEO said. "Board level. Permanent." I stared at the skyline. Didn't speak. "You don't have to decide today," she added. But I already had. I replied, "Let's make it official." That night, I went home, pulled out a bottle I'd been saving. Not champagne. Scotch. Neat. To legacy. My inbox pinged again. Another voicemail from Richard, still using the same tone. Half apology, half plea. "I heard about the equity clause. You're playing chess. Always were. Karen, please." I hit forward, sent it to Marcus with a new caption. He finally realized who trained him. Too bad he never learned. Then I deleted the original. Some voices don't need to echo, especially when your signature just changed your title. Again, the ink on my board seat was barely dry when I called an all-hands meeting. Not for drama, for dividends. The same team Richard had once called non-essential. They filled our conference room now. Janice, Calvin, Deshawn, even Marcus, arms crossed in the back, pretending not to smile. I stood at the front. No PowerPoint. Just facts. "You built this," I said. "Every one of you. And it's time you got more than a paycheck." I slid a folder across the table. Inside, offer letters, retention bonuses, partial equity options, real stakes. Deshawn's jaw dropped. "Wait, we're shareholders?" I nodded. "Not just employees, partners." Janice blinked fast. "Karen, this doesn't happen." I shrugged. Did anything about the last few months feel normal? Laughter broke the tension. The good kind. After the meeting, Marcus lingered. He held his folder like it might vanish. "You didn't have to do this." "No," I said. "But I wanted to." We'd survived the storm. Now I wanted us to own the damn sky. Later that day, I got an anonymous tip. One of those little digital envelopes that arrives with no name, just heat. Inside, an email thread. Brittany, weeks before the dinner ambush, pitching her father a strategic reorg that included my termination. Line-by-line justification. "Karen's loyalty may become a threat if we don't move now." So it hadn't been a whim. Or nepotism in the moment. It was premeditated. She saw me as a threat before I even raised my voice. I closed the laptop, poured another inch of scotch, and smiled. Not out of spite, out of clarity. Because every insult they whispered became a line on my resume. Every snub, a signature. I'd spent 17 years doing the work quietly. Now, the whole damn industry was quoting me. That night, I walked the office halls alone. Lights low, papers stacked neatly. Outside, the streetlights flickered like old film. But inside, this place was alive. My place, my people. No spotlight needed. Because the work spoke louder than any speech Richard ever gave. 2 weeks later, I stood on stage in Chicago. The Industry Summit. 400 executives. LED lights. Lanyards. Glossy brochures with my name in the keynote slot. Karen Doyle. Rebuilding After Betrayal. Why Loyalty Still Wins. I hadn't asked for that title, but I didn't change it. They handed me a clicker. Set the timer. I looked out at the room and didn't feel nerves, just the weight of everyone I carried with me. I told the story, not the gossip version, the real one. How blind trust in last names nearly sank a company. How middle managers, quiet ones, had done more than executives with yachts. How a woman labeled resistant to change was the change. I didn't name Richard, didn't need to. His ghost haunted every slide. After, 3 VPs approached me. One offered a board seat. Another wanted a consulting retainer. The third just shook my hand and said, "That was fire." But the best moment came after the crowd thinned. A girl, maybe 24, waited quietly by the curtain. "You don't know me," she said, voice trembling, But I worked under Brittany for 6 weeks. I raised an eyebrow. She nodded. She made me cry twice, said I wasn't big picture enough. Her eyes glistened. But the thing is, your old documents? The ones she passed off? They taught me. I kept copies, studied them. You made me better, even if you didn't know it. I blinked, hard. Thank you, she said, for being the kind of leader people don't forget. I gave her my card. Let me know when you're ready for your next job. We're hiring. Outside, the skyline pulsed with lights. I stood still, letting the wind pull at my coat. No bitterness, no regrets, just one text, blinking on my phone, from an unknown number. It read, "You win. I give up. R." I didn't reply. I opened the LinkedIn Blackwell app instead, approved another hire, then forwarded Richard's message to the team group chat with a new caption. Some trophies don't shine. They whimper. I was locking up late when Marcus burst into my office, out of breath. You need to see this. He dropped a manila envelope on my desk. Unmarked, old school. Inside, photos, printed emails, a signed non-disclosure. My name was all over it. But so was Langton Blackwell's. I scanned the last page, a confidential acquisition pitch, from before they offered me the board seat. Marcus said quietly, "They didn't just want your talent. They planned to gut Carmichael all along." I looked up, voice flat, so I was never the chess player, just the queen they moved. I stared at the page, heart pounding slow and deep, like footsteps in an empty hall. Langton Blackwell's letterhead. Dated 6 weeks before that family dinner. Subject, target, Carmichael Industries, internal vulnerability plan. And right there in bullet points, leverage Karen Doyle's client trust to destabilize vendor pipeline. Offer Doyle visible leadership role post-disruption to retain migrating accounts. Initiate informal contact post-Q1 audit report. Prep press for industry shakeup. My name came up 5 times, not as a partner, as a pawn. Marcus sat across from me, arms folded, jaw tight. You were played. All of us were. I wanted to scream, cry, burn something. But I didn't. I read the memo, again, and again. Then I stood up, crossed the office, and looked out at the city. Cold lights blinking in the dark, like the whole skyline was holding its breath. They hadn't chosen me, despite the fallout. They'd chosen me because of it. My fall was their fuse. I'd built this new house on the bones of the old one, and they were already drawing up blueprints for the next teardown. I whispered, "They think I won't burn it all again." Marcus nodded. "So what's the play?" I picked up the envelope. We flipped the board. "Karen," he said, careful, "that means war." "No," I said, "that means truth." Over the next week, I traced every string. Langton Blackwell's silent investors? 3 had ties to Carmichael's original seed fund. Old money, never cashed out. They'd let it rot from the inside. Every slide I'd presented, every victory I'd claimed, they'd mapped out months earlier. They hadn't stolen my story. They'd written it. But here's what they didn't know. They thought I'd be flattered, humbled by the seat they gave me. But I'd already learned. If someone hands you power, they'll take it back when they're done. So I took my power the same way I always had. Quietly, deliberately, and with witnesses. I called Danielle Foster first, laid out everything. She didn't blink. "I suspected," she said. "But you earned my trust. That's real." Then she said, "So what's next?" By the next board meeting, I had what I needed. 3 key clients ready to walk if I resigned. 2 department heads backing me. A forensic audit Marcus had assembled, showing timeline manipulation in Langton's strategy deck. And a final weapon, my own contract clause. Page 7, paragraph 3. Should Langton Blackwell engage in strategic deception to procure client migration, the undersigned retains right to trigger dissolution review. The clause had been a joke when I wrote it. Insurance buried deep. Now, it was a grenade with the pin already halfway out. I walked into the meeting 10 minutes early, sat at the head of the table, let them come to me. The CEO, Miriam Langton, breezed in like nothing was burning. "Karen," she smiled, "I hope you're enjoying the view from the top." I slid the envelope across the table. Thought you'd want a copy of your own plan. She barely blinked. It was business. I met her gaze. No, it was theft. And now it's exposure. She glanced at the board members. You really want to blow this up? I leaned forward. You handed me a match. Don't flinch when I strike it. Silence. Then one of the board members cleared his throat. What do you want, Karen? I didn't pause. Full equity reallocation for my team. Independent oversight installed. All client-facing materials rebranded with my name, or I walk, with every account I brought in. And if we say no? Miriam asked. I stood, smoothed my sleeves. Then I'll start my own firm. Beat. Again. They voted. It passed. Barely. Miriam resigned a week later. I didn't celebrate. I worked. Now? I sit in the corner office. Real corner. Floor-to-ceiling glass. The company bears my name now. Doyle Strategic Group. Smaller, sharper, built right. Danielle's our advisory chair. Marcus runs operations. Deshawn leads analytics. Janice built the compliance system from scratch. No gimmicks, no golden bloodlines, just people who earned it. Last week, I got a message from Brittany. She's working retail. Said she finally realized how much she never knew. She asked if we could talk. Maybe coffee. I didn't delete it. But I didn't reply. Some chapters end best with silence.